Working. Hey, good morning. Happy Monday. I know it's Easter Monday, but I thought I'd do a show anyway because after a while we kind of lose track of what day is what. So might as well do something here. So again, I have to fiddle around here. I hope you're all well. And I want to do this screen and share this. And then sorry, slideshow from the beginning. Okay, this is kind of a story, kind of a discussion, and I also need to fire up my laser pointer because I'm going to need it. So I'll just put that there. If you've got a cat, you could just put the cat there and see if he wants to chase that while I'm talking, but let's not do that. Okay, so I want to talk about two wolves, which is another way of talking about how we think. I've spent quite a bit of time over the last, I guess we've been doing this for 3 weeks. This is the third week, I think. Like I said, you lose track of days after a while. I spent a lot of time talking about how we think about stuff. And one of the advantages, as well as one of the disadvantages of all the time that we have right now, is that we have a lot of time to think. We can get in our heads a lot. And when we're in there, and for many of us, that's like dangerous place to be. But when we are in there, we have to be really careful about what we are thinking. So I'll take you through this, and this also has a fairly big piece about teenage brains too. So, and I'll get to the rest of this story at the end, but people smarter than me, a couple of elders actually, have told me a few times about the story about us having two wolves inside us. One wolf that tells us good things, that talks to us about patience and kindness and tolerance and love and stuff like that. And the other, more negative wolf is about self-centeredness, dishonesty, resentment, fear, greed, those kinds of things. So if we take a look at a teenage brain, and I don't know if you can see this, but I'm in my way here. And this obviously is a cartoon. I particularly like this because way down in this bottom corner is the memory for chores and homework. And I'm sure that if you are a teen, that's not huge in your life at the moment. There's a whole bunch of other stuff that seems more interesting to you. And if you're a parent or a teacher, you're wondering, okay, how do I get them to activate this little part down here? And then the rest of this is fairly interesting and amusing. Love and hate for parents is that yin yang symbol there. The slamming punching reflex, which is fairly large. Rebellion center, ego, personality fluctuations, addiction to Facebook and cell phones. Self-image is pretty small. Awkwardness a little bit bigger. TV storage a little bit bigger than that. And this big part up here, this big love lobe, is important. And it's really important for teens to feel loved. And Eric and I got into that a little bit when we were talking on Friday about that what you think piece. If you're giving yourself lots of negative talk, that love lobe isn't properly stimulated. But let's skip to a more accurate look at the brain. So the amygdala is way up in the middle there, and it's responsible for a bunch of stuff. It's our emotional core for passion, impulse, fear, aggression, and adults hopefully rely on that less. Teens tend to be more impulsive because that part is not necessarily more active than an adult's, but doesn't have the controls built in that an adult's has. The hippocampus, which is our hub of memory and learning, it develops in teenagers. And there's a tremendous learning curve that goes on in teenage brain development. It is important. And that's also why it's important to, as much as we possibly can, keep adolescent brains free from chemical interference with drugs and alcohol. The ventral striatum is part of the reward center. And again, it's not fully developed in teens. And teens are more excited by reward than by consequence. That's why when you're talking to a teen, it's really difficult for them to process the idea, well, if you keep doing this, this is going to happen in 5 years. Like that just doesn't work for them. I can never say that word properly, parietal lobe. Sorry for anybody who's trying to understand me. You can look it up, I guess. Teens don't process emotion or don't process information really effectively. This is another part that's really developing. The prefrontal cortex, this big red part here, it is the thing that's really developing in teenagers, and it includes processing and reasoning. And that's again why it's really important to allow teen brains to develop without a lot of external interference. When we start to introduce drugs or alcohol into a teenage brain, it really short circuits this developmental process, and teens end up evolving without being able to develop as they normally should. So if we look at some of the consequences of substance use in adolescents, this was results that were obtained from 16 and 18-year-olds, and it looked at what happened to them based on the age that they started drinking and using. And it has some interesting stats in it. Now it says here 15 or older, and that's not saying that it's okay to start drinking or using when you are older than 15, but it helps us understand this early developmental period. So people who started 12 or younger, and it's interesting to note that average first age of alcohol use in Saskatchewan is 11, and average first use of cannabis is 12 years, 2 months. And so 49% of kids who started at 12 or younger did something that they couldn't remember. 45% experienced passing out from alcohol, and that's a sign of alcohol poisoning. More arguments with family members, damaging property, getting injured, decline in schoolwork, got in trouble with police, 19%, got in a physical fight, 19%, lost friends or broke up with somebody, 13%, had sex when they didn't want to, 12%, experienced an overdose of some sort, 5%, got into a car accident, 5%. And those are low because those kids typically aren't driving. And got treatment for substance use, 3%. So one of the things about kids that start really young is it's very, very noticeable. I know I just did a workshop with a few kids a few weeks ago, and we had 4 kids in there who were under 13, and we're already experiencing significant life consequences from their drug or alcohol use. So 13 and 14-year-olds, these stats start to go down a little bit, but not a whole lot. Kids that start later tend to have less consequence. So the longer we can delay initiation of drug or alcohol use, the better it is for kids. This last stat always bothers me. Getting treatment for substance use. It's really difficult to get kids to commit to go to treatment. Although interestingly enough, in the last about 3 months, I've had, I think, 4 or 5 kids go into treatment, and all of them felt like it was a really useful time for them, that they learned a lot. So one of the things that we tend to forget is that parents have a lot of power, not like control power, but influence power over their kids. Kids care what parents think. And parents, we need to be able to explain things to kids in a loving and caring manner, not in a you have to do this manner, because they don't like listening to that. So it says parents have more influence over their child than friends, music, TV, internet, and celebrities. Kids who learn a lot about the risks of drugs and alcohol from their parents are up to 50% less likely to use than kids who don't. Help your teen stay safe and make healthy choices by talking and listening regularly. And that listening piece is huge. I talk to parents over and over and over about this. If your teen wants to talk to you or starts to talk to you, shut the heck up and listen. I talk to kids all the time, and I listen to kids all the time. And one of the things that I say to them is, "Do you talk to your parents about this?" And typically the answer is no. And I'll say, "Why not?" And they say, "Well, they don't listen. I start talking about something and they immediately start telling me what to do or what not to do. And I don't feel respected at all. And so then I just lose interest in talking to them." So giving your teen the opportunity to talk and being able to be quiet and listen to them is really important. Uh, be directly involved in your child's everyday world. And this is really big right now. Like, for many of you, your kids are going to be at home with you. And if you're just doing your thing and they're just doing their thing, then we're losing an opportunity to better connect, to do something together. I was just out at my daughter's on the weekend, and I spent a whole bunch of grandpa time playing with kids, and we were out hiking and building forts and stuff like that. And it's not, like it wasn't a whole lot of conversation, but just the fact that somebody was doing something with them was really important to them, and it was really important to me too. Uh, make it clear that you don't want them to use drugs or alcohol. That's important. And you can do it that a couple of ways. If you just say, again, like, don't do that, that tends to not work as well. But if you explain why it affects you, why you care that they don't, that's a much bigger deal. And set limits on everything. Set limits on their routine, set limits on what they're doing every day, so that they start to achieve some balance in their life. And because typically when kids look at their substance use or what's going on with them, they're an awful lot like this little mouse. They figure it's not going to be that bad. Yeah, there's some risks, but I'm going to be okay. And when we look at that, we know that even though he's got his cute little red helmet on, when he grabs that cheese, it's not going to work particularly well for him. So check your thoughts as a parent, and check your thoughts as a kid too. Uh, I'm just experimenting. Experimenting is a one-time event. If you've done something more than once, it's no longer an experiment. Watch the justs. If you're saying, well, it's just alcohol or it's just marijuana, that's not good thinking. That's not healthy thinking. And the name of the drug is irrelevant. When you're using something and you like it, you're developing a relationship with intoxication. And what that does is it starts to interfere with your brain development, because it becomes the thing that you look for when you don't like how you're feeling. And, one of the things that I hear over and over again from kids when I say, well, why are you doing that? It's always, I like it. And absolutely, that liking it part is true. But there's always something underneath that too, or generally there's something underneath that. It's fixing something. And if it's fixing something, it's interfering with brain development. It's a rite of passage, that thinking. teens are supposed to do this. I'm a teenager. My kids are teenagers. I did that when I was a teenager. All those kinds of things enter into our thinking. But any drug use is, including alcohol, is risky behavior. And there's lots of that. Well, it's just recreational. And recreation isn't about drug and alcohol use. It's something you do with footballs or dance shoes or whatever. And although some of that's a little more difficult these days, it's something that we have to really check our thinking on. And so back to the wolf story. So the elder was talking to his grandson, and he said, inside of me, there are two wolves fighting. There's a bad wolf and a good wolf. And the grandson looked at his grandfather and said, well, that scares me. Like, what's going to happen? What are these wolves doing? And the grandpa said, uh, sorry, the grandpa said that the bad wolf is always trying to get me to do the wrong thing. It feeds my anger. It makes me think other people are better than me or have more stuff. Makes me feel bad, makes me greedy, makes me arrogant, think I'm better than everybody else. Makes me feel sorry for myself, poor me. Makes me feel guilty about stuff that I've done, resentment. Makes me feel that other people are better than me. Makes me lie. It makes me be a phony. It it makes me think that I'm really better than I am. And the little boy says, "Well, what about the good wolf?" Well, the good wolf is joy and peace and love and hope and serenity and humility and being kind and benevolent. The little boy says, "What's benevolent?" Well, it's being nice to other people. Oh, okay. Empathy, like feeling other people's pain, being generous, being honest, compassion, and having faith that we're getting what we need. And the little boy says, well, Grandpa, which wolf will win? And the grandpa says, the wolf that wins will be the wolf that I feed. And that's really true. If we focus on this side, if we focus on the good side, that's the wolf that we feed. And that other one, this other side, starts to starve. If we pay attention to this stuff, even if we fight it, if we think about it, it still gets stronger. If we just keep our focus on the good side, then things will get better. So that's the show for today. Thank you very much. I have to stop the screen share, and I will be back tomorrow. Take care. Feed your good wolf. Have a good day. Thank you. And end recording.